came in like a missile, like a fireball missile across from the New York harbor side, I guess from the Newark direction. It came in like a spear. It just speared through the building like a fireball. You know, you can see the cut of the incision into the building is sideways, so the plane was slightly on its side, and that's why it made me think maybe it was in distress. But then when it obviously hit, there was almost no doubt that it was intentional. I dropped the phone, and my arms dropped to my side, and I just heard everybody in the office say, "Get out, get out." And then it was when I was heading down on 27, just about 27, didn't hear an explosion. All of a sudden, the staircase moved, and a crack in the wall appeared, maybe about 6 or 8 inches. I kept on looking at the numbers coming down the stairwell, 15, 14, counting, and then I actually thought, I can make it. And when I got out, I looked like I've never seen war up close, but today I have.
You know, I said, that's going to go down like the first one. And it came down, and it was just this sound, this rumble, and this mass cloud coming at us. It was intense.
At that point, we decided just to get out of there. People were just going crazy at that point, evacuating.
Everybody go straight. This ambulance is about 100 feet ahead.
Clear out of here now. Folks, we are evacuating this part of Manhattan. Get out of here now. Let's go, folks. Let's go. Let's go. Come on.
How are people getting off the island right now?
Right now, they're walking. A lot of people are getting up to the bridges, and they're walking over the 59th Street Bridge. They're walking over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Long Island Railroad, limited service. New Jersey, if you want to get to New Jersey, folks, you have to go to 34th and 11th at the Jacob Javits Center. They will assist you getting to New Jersey. Long Island Railroad, limited service, city subways, not working.
One thing I'm sure about 9/11, and that is that whoever you are listening, if you were alive at that point on that day, you still remember where you were and what you were doing when those planes hit. Welcome to this very special 9/11 presentation, 9/11, Darkest Day, Brightest Night. I'm your host, Vernon, the Word Master, and on today's presentation, we are going to be taking a look back in line with the theme for this month that we've been looking at. And for more information, please visit our Word Master Presents YouTube channel. The link is in the description. So, as I mentioned, you remember where you were. For me, it was in front of the television, watching Good Morning America at the time. That day, and the days before that, the months before that, the years before that, starting back from around 1997, I was running from God. And as I was recently reminded, God is actually at the destination where you find yourself running to. So the truth is, I could not outrun him. But that morning, he had my attention arrested on the news because there was about to be a decision, a pivotal moment. But my initial thoughts as I was watching that event was that this is interesting because as a student of history, I've known that ever since 1812, America has not been attacked on the homeland, and this looked blatantly like an attack. The first plane, as the news were talking, of course it could look like an accident. We've seen those before, but then when that second plane hit, you knew unmistakably that it was no coincidence, no accident. And then, after my initial thought of that, my next thought was going back to those days in church and in Bible study when we looked at end-time events. Now, I don't know how I linked 9/11 to an end-time event, but something in my mind triggered that if these were end times, then I needed to be right with God. And so I got down from the chair I was sitting in, went on my knees for the first time, and I don't even remember, and I prayed and asked the Lord to forgive me for running from him. I asked him if he would accept me. I would be in church that weekend. Fast forward to that weekend, by the way, and I guess I wasn't the only one who had made that commitment. Church was packed. Anyhow, that day I was glued to the television. Back then I was a news junkie. I mean, I'm trained in journalism, but everything has to do with the news. Addicted. And so I spent all day glued to the television. Now, in hindsight, that was very unhealthy. But the aftermath of all of that was something interesting as I looked back. I thought, with clarity. And that's what happens when you give your mind over to the Lord, by the way, my friends. In those hazy, clouded mind moments when I thought the world was ending, my initial thought was that I needed to save myself from destruction. But in the aftermath, changes were now not about myself, but God's glory. And the mental processes began to work. Anyway, the Lord just opened to my mind and said to me, did anything look odd in what you saw today? And I had to admit, sure enough, there were some very interesting things that I had seen and heard that did not match up with a foreign power or entities invading the United States of America. Chief among them, I'm always saying that if you say something in the privacy of your own home about the United States government, that you could expect a knock on the door. If that is the case for ordinary Americans, don't you think that these entities there in the National Security Bureau would be monitoring the world? And so things were off. The focus of today's presentation is not to delve into those things. If you want more on that, there are several links, YouTube videos, in the description. What I wanted to look at, the aftermath that I wanted to focus on, is what I had seen in the fallen days, which was a united front. Democrats, Republicans, people who didn't like each other. I mean, even the criminal element of the United States, and just about everybody came together with one common notion. Again, like I said, as a journalist, one of my things is going back into history and see how journalism played a part in historical events. And during World War II, propaganda cartoons were all the rage. And one of the things that I paid special attention to was like the superheroes or the big heroes of that day punching Hitler in the nose. And in my mind, that is exactly what I saw. A national consciousness, one person coming together to give the enemy what's what. But the lasting image that would forever be etched on my mind is seeing the members of Congress, both Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and whatever else lied in between, all stand together in unison on the steps of the United States Congress. And I said in my mind, man, if that could be the lasting living legacy of these United States, us as a people truly realizing that united we stand, divided we fall. I mean, we've had our brush with oneness on a local level whenever disasters hit. Even now as you're listening, there's the aftermath of the fires in Hawaii, the hurricane that hit the United States East Coast, and other different events where neighbors have been helping neighbors. But this one particular era in United States history stands unique in that we were Americans. We were one, truly, that one nation. But friends, sadly, it was all a facade. It was all a facade. In fact, again, as I mentioned, the goal of this video is not to highlight all the different investigations that proved, which many persons already know, that 9/11 was an inside job. But again, it was all geared towards passing the USA Patriot Act, which in essence gutted the United States Constitution, diminished the rights of American citizens, and put us on a path of totalitarianism, which, by the way, we can see that we are in today. So that darkest day in U.S. history that led to the brightest night of hope that we could be one nation under God indeed, a house united. It was all a facade. 9/11 and the loss of those thousands of lives was engineered just to get this bill to become law. This bill that changed America forever. So not only did these laws change, but America was changed forever. Security was ratcheted up. The TSA, which now is common in our lives, is a thing. And one of the things that came out from that day was, if you see something, say something. And as innocuous as that may seem, that's right out of Gestapo Nazi Germany. I mean, do you see the parallels? In fact, one thing that I do want to mention in here as part of investigation is to remind you, especially those of you who are students of history, that in ancient Rome, Nero burned the city and blamed it on the Christians/Jews, again, to divert attention from his diabolical plans and the way that he was driving Rome down to the ground. And then fast forward in modern times, we had Hitler burning the Reichstag, and of course again, blaming it on the Jews. And won't you know it, one of the elements that came out of 9/11 was that it was blamed on a religious sect. Friend of mine, understand that end-time events were shaped that day. Things began to wind down on 9/11, 2001. But the lasting legacy that I want to leave us with on today is that we need to be resolved that us, on the individual level, will never forget where we were when we saw those iconic buildings crumble to the ground. I remember growing up in my country, learning about U.S. history, and one of the pictures that was always in the books and always on the TV screens was of those twin towers. They represented America. And to see them gone, to me that was profound, because it is telling of the loss of America. Friend of mine, in these my final thoughts, I want you never to forget that the Bible is clear that there's wickedness in high places, and we're not dealing with powers that are friendly to its citizens. We're seeing the decline of the American experiment. And even in 2023, 22 years after 9/11, we can see the death throes of this once mighty empire. Who knows how long we have, but we can see that this country is spiraling into oblivion, and the Bible predicted that it would, so that the woman of Revelation 17 could ride her towards the final endgame, the mark of the beast crisis. For more information on what was just mentioned, go to the description area and you'll find a link to a book entitled The Great Controversy. Once again, a book entitled The Great Controversy. Also, while you're down there in the comment section, just type in where you were on 9/11, what you were doing, and just what you learned, lessons that you learned, and things that were different. You know, if you want to pay tribute to those who are lost, you may do so. And just as we close out, my friends, I want you to resolve that what happened on 9/11 is something that if you don't know, that you look into, because the events are pivotal. And I mean, just by you watching the videos in the description, you'll see that it was not all that they said. It was, one of the biggest setups in this country. In fact, something happened in later times that was an even bigger setup and killed even more people than 9/11, and it's not what the national media and everyone else is telling you. you need to be a noble Berean, if you know what that is, and to do investigations for yourself to find out if these things are so. Friends of mine, it is very important that you take charge of your life, because there's coming a day, as prophesied, where persons will take charge of it. You won't be able to buy and sell, just like in Daniel's day when they had to bow down to the image or forfeit their lives. Going back to 9/11 and on that day, friend of mine, understand that you should not have to wait until a pivotal event, a world-changing event, to give your life to Jesus Christ. Now, today is a day of opportunity when you can do so. My last words to you are, please, please, give your life to Jesus Christ, and let September 11th, today, be the first day of the rest of your life, and let this be a September to remember. God bless.
Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose turn impassioned stress, a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond thy leaves, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human deeds. America, America, God shed